Let's talk supply chain. So welcome to the show, Travis.
Thanks, Sarah. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you here. I mean, I've been working with WiseTech and Envase for a couple of years now, and what they're doing in the industry is so dynamic. The creation of this network of businesses that tackle every possible industry need is really kind of exciting. And in 2021, you became a part of it with DrayMaster. So I can't wait to find out more about the amazing work that you do, what you're bringing to the WiseTech family, what you're bringing to the industry. So let's dive right in. Now, Travis, you've had an incredible career in the industry to date. You've founded several companies. So walk us through what that's looked like and your journey with DrayMaster. I mean, how did you even come up with it?
It's actually been, you're right, being a part of the Wise Tech and Envase and all of that now, it's exciting times. And, my background really, it started in 97, started out managing inland intermodal rail terminals in
Okay.
the Midwest. And, through that, I learned quite a bit about the drayage space, obviously. And then in '02, we started a trucking company in the drayage space, started out with 5 trucks and then we grew that to 450 trucks in 9 cities, sold that in 2012. And then that's really when DrayMaster came into play. The idea was, there's a platform out there for LTL, truckload, things like that, where you can go online and get a rate return, but nothing like that for the drayage space. So in 2012, Tom and I started talking about, what does that look and feel like, and how does that happen, and realizing how incredibly complicated drayage really is.
Right.
After about 5 years of that, in 2017, we finally got to start selling DrayMaster services. And then in 21 is when Envase acquired us, and now we're a part of WiseTech Global.
Amazing. And I just want to make a note of that for everybody too, is that you were talking about it. It took you about 5 years to even get to the point where you could start selling the services of DrayMaster. Because a lot of times, right, we see this and we're like, oh, it's an overnight success. They barely had to do anything. So I just wanted to bring, and shine a light on that in the fact that, this stuff does take time. I mean, you started your first one, I think, the one that you sold in 2012 in the
Mhm.
early 2000s, that takes some time. And then you took 5 years for the DrayMaster. And so thank you so much for sharing the entrepreneurship journey and what that kind of looks like and how many years it takes, because I think that's really valuable also for people to know, especially when you're looking to partner with a technology company, right? How long have you been working on this? How long have you been around? What does that look like? I think that's a super important question that people need to be asking when they look for a partner.
And not to mention, you start out with one idea, and by the time you talk to customers or prospects, it turns into something completely different. So
That is such an amazing point to add. I've been down that road a few times. And, if you haven't been on that entrepreneurial journey, especially in technology, that's exactly how it looks. So give us an introduction. Who is DrayMaster? What do you do? And how do you help your customers?
yeah, so the brief overview really is we're the only digital rate management system out there today that
Okay.
provides full transparency. And for truckers, it's a place to high level store, manage, and automate all of their rates, still by keeping full control. And for 3PLs, and when I say 3PLs, I'm talking brokers, forwarders, 3PLs,
Right.
NVOCCs, anyone on that side of the business, a place to manage their drayage partners and all the specific components associated with every lane and move that they're searching for.
Yeah. And thank you for breaking that down for us. I use 3PL loosely as well because I think everybody knows what that means. It means third party logistics provider, but it could mean a whole bunch of different things, from freight forwarder to warehouses to distribution, that kind of thing. So I love that you rolled that out for us. And so let's take a look at those customers, because you work with truckers and with the 3PLs that we just mentioned. Do they have to be a certain size or a certain location? Do you have an ideal client?
So we do, and you'll see as I talk about this, I break them down into both. We talk about the trucker side and the 3PL side because we do have them on both sides of the platform. On the trucker side, we provide value to truckers of all sizes, whether they have one truck, one location, to thousands of trucks and several locations across the U.S. And and the main thing is that they serve the ramps and/or ports,
Right.
somewhere within the US, because we focus specifically on drayage. Then for the 3PLs, really I would say 20 plus employees is where we really find that they see
Okay.
the benefit. Smaller forwarders, brokers, 3PLs can use it, but you really see the value with 20 plus employees or so. And then it really helps shippers, around the block, around the world, better manage all of their rates on the landside side of the US. So we got a lot of global forwarders that, have customers overseas that need to find rates in the US. So
You know what? I come from a logistics background. And so I was in operations for a number of years. And I'll tell you, trying to get rates was like pulling teeth. And I'm dating myself a little bit because I think I'm going back, I don't know, probably at least 12 years or so.
okay.
But it was like, you send an email, here's all the details. And then, your overseas agent comes back and they're like, oh, you missed a detail. So I lost 24 hours. So I give them that detail. And then it takes them 5 days to email me back with a rate. And the client's going, what's taking so long? Like, we really need this rate from you. And so you talking about global forwarders having clients overseas that are looking to be able to price things that are in a different country or in North America or what have you, knowing that you can do it under like for one click. I was like, where is this when I was in operations? I mean, the amount of stress that it could have saved me,
I
priceless.
I hear that on just about every call I do, demo I give. So I completely agree.
Right? Like, how many emails do we have to send for rates? We really shouldn't even have to send one.
I know it, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but really it's you spend a lot of time searching for rates and on the trucker
Right.
providing rates and something you may not even see the light of day on. So
That is so true because half of what we quote, we actually don't even get anyways. But that's a story for a completely other
yes.
episode. So let's talk about the market.
Mhm.
We're at the end of 2023. We're looking ahead to the new year. What does the landscape look like? What's happening sort of overall, but also tell us, what's happening more specifically for truckers and 3PLs.
Yeah, so I mean, overall, as we all know and see that it's a competitive market and everybody's fighting over what freight crumbs are out there.
Yep.
And from the truckers' perspective, we've seen this influx of smaller carriers coming on board since COVID, hoping to capitalize on the unfortunate market at the time.
Mhm.
And so now today we're seeing more of those revocations than we're seeing authorities coming into play. And I think that's going to play out for a little while before we see things level out to, pre-pandemic levels, if you will. And, for truckers really to survive in the market, they've got to be running lean as they can, agile and mainly responsive as possible. A lot of this, and I'll probably say it a few times, but first to market is everything, especially right now. Um, on the 3PL side of things, they're also under the same type of pressures as truckers. Some may argue that, but on top of which, truckers are constantly changing their rates. And what we've learned from even during COVID, truckers are trying to get away from their tariffs and providing full rate tariffs to customers because they want to control day to day what they're going to charge and make the most, value where they can. But by doing that, they're really hiding the rates, and ultimately for the 3PL, it leads to slower pay because it's going to go into an invoice discrepancy. They're going to say, hey, you quoted me this, you're now trying to charge me this,
Mhm.
and it's going to be a dispute. It's a lot of time and money wasted between both sides, leading to frustration on both sides. So, in order to succeed under those pressures, the 3PLs need to be accurate, very informative, and really organized enough to understand what they're requesting when they're requesting rates. If a smaller company doesn't realize that there could be chassis positioning charges or something along those lines, a trucker's not going to freely throw those out there. Not all truckers, I should say.
Right.
You're going to have to find that work out on your own.
Well, and I think you bring up a really great point there is that we need to make sure that there's trust amongst all of the players in the supply chain, really, for all of this to work. And
Exactly.
if that's how you're operating, you're really not operating at that kind of level where you're establishing trust, you're establishing partners, you're being transparent. Right? Because if you're not being transparent with them, they can't be transparent with their customers. And then we just get back to where we were before, where everybody's sort of blaming each other. And we don't want to do that. We need to have an environment of collaboration and trust, right? And it also has a reputation from a branding perspective as well that really hurts the brand, which I don't think a lot of these people really think about. But when you're operating in that way and you're creating some of that distress, it also has a lot of effect on your brand.
It does, and that's really where, like, I encourage people to start. People throw the word partnership around a lot,
Yeah.
but they don't really create true partnerships. A partnership to me is when the downtime happens, like COVID, you're going to stand by each other and work together to resolve the problems that are happening. And we lost a lot of that when it came to the COVID portion, but you really need to get back there. Transparency and the openness and creating partnerships.
So let's talk about how this translates into the challenges that organizations are facing right now. We've talked just now about one of them. What are some of those other unique challenges? What do they look like for truckers and for 3PLs?
Yeah, again, breaking it down. So for truckers, it may be hard to believe on some of this, but you wouldn't believe how many truckers I talk to that don't even understand their own rates or how they got their rates, and then typically
Yeah.
they're just adding to them over time. They don't ever have a chance to clean them up. And that's, so that's a big piece of it. Not They need to understand their own rates. So to our point earlier, they're quoting several times a day. I mean, some companies just have people that's all they do is quote, with the understanding they may not see that business. So it's a lot of time spent on that.
Yeah.
RFPs, typically you used to be able to say, okay, September's our peak. Obviously that's changed. And now RFPs can come at any time of the year, right? And being
Right.
able to quickly complete an RFP and get it back to win the business, that's your greatest chance of winning business are through RFPs. So being able to handle that quickly. Many larger companies have problems with employees pricing different. Sarah may price the customer today at one rate and forget a chassis charge. I may quote Sarah next week and add that chassis charge. It just makes us look unprofessional, like we're trying to hide something. So that's more on the trucker side. On the 3PL side, I would say it's really obviously the opposite. They're spending their time calling and emailing truckers, waiting for responses. Sometimes that could be after hours or before hours, and they're just waiting for that email to come in.
Yeah.
And then, the not really having a clear place to manage all of those rates. They'll come in through an email or a phone call. Where are they storing them? 9 times out of 10, I hear it's on an Excel spreadsheet. So,
Right.
and then really nowhere to compare those rates and finding new partners and new lanes, not to mention, the fuel, the accessorials, and the surcharges that change often. So to our point, a quote you received a few days ago, even though I may have quoted it both times, that can change. Chassis charges could have gone up. We may have added a terminal surcharge. There's very different variances that could impact that, but I would say that would be the biggest challenges for both sides.
Yeah, and one of the things that you mentioned was the human element. I remember as a 3PL, trying to build a quote for somebody, and you send the quote out or even an RFP and you're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, wait a second. I did not account for X." Right? And oh man, I should have known that. But really, it's a human element. It depends on where my head's at that day. What time of day is it? Have I had a cup of coffee if I'm a coffee drinker? And have I had that second one in the afternoon if I'm a second cup coffee drinker? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that human element in the fact that, we may not remember everything when we are quoting, and we need the tools to be able to make sure to back us up and maybe even give us the indicator to say, hey, you forgot this surcharge, and being able to have the opportunity to say, yes, we need to add it, or no, we don't need to add it in this case because I had, I covered it some other way.
Exactly. Yep.
And so how do we tackle some of these challenges, right? What is the solution? What are the opportunities that solution really starts to unlock for organizations?
Yeah. So, for truckers, I would say the main thing they need to have the ability to adapt and change, which is hard for a lot of us in this industry that are not used to technology. But
Yeah.
digitally managing their rates and making them available to their customers. Again, I've said it before, first to market. That's really what it's where a lot of the truckers are winning in certain areas right now. The streamlining and expediting the RFP processes and having consistent pricing across the company. So that's what they're really going to have to tackle to really start benefiting from the automated portion. And we help truckers get to that point. It does take a little bit of time to get set up because truckers have different rates with every customer they do business with if they want to. Fuel, line haul, tolls, some tolls don't apply. So, we hold their hand getting set up through that entire process. On the 3PL side of things, I would have to say, the biggest pain point for them, in my opinion, is they need to minimize their invoice discrepancies. And they do that by digitizing their rates and working with their partners in that fashion. Giving them one place, I said it before, but one place to manage their rates, whether it's an email, Excel, or whatever, this is all in one format, one place, and everyone can go to the same place to get the truth. And that really just comes down to having a streamlined quoting process across the board and having, the employees that are doing that understand what the company's goals are there.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly where DrayMaster does come in. So talk to us about how it all works and talk us through what that solution looks like for truckers and 3PLs. Like, what can they really do with it?
This is where I can really dive into pieces. So I'll do my best to keep it high level, but how it works, I'll start out with the trucker side of things. It gives them a place to easily store and maintain the rates for their entire service territory. We go off of 5 key components, really. It's line haul, fuel, tolls, chassis rental, and chassis positioning. Anything else, we look at that as a potential accessorial. If they have, an existing rate tariff, we're going to analyze it. We're going to clean up misspellings, incorrect city-state combinations, invalid zip codes they may have had added over the years. If they're a small company, we'll help them create one based on their own logic. We don't compare them to their competitors. They're always going to have full control and access to who sees their rates, when and how often. Automating the process that allows them, a trucker can put a link now using DrayMaster in their email signature or on their website and, get a live FCL quote and have that customer click on it, put in the parameters and get a rate returned as if somebody was on the other end doing it automatically.
Wow.
And then understanding how often, to our earlier point, how often are you getting awarded the business that you've been quoting? DrayMaster provides tools for you to get to that point so you can really understand that. And I mentioned that we have a bid tool that you can handle, the RFPs quickly, our multi-lane searches. And then we'll get to this later on, but the professional looking quotes that we send out, and I'm sure you've seen this and being in the logistics side of it, you can get the rates back from a trucker, but is it on a napkin? Is it on an email? Is it, did they call you? You got to put all those pieces together. So, with DrayMaster, you're providing a professional looking quote every time, and right where to look to find out what that specific charge is going to be, no matter which trucker you're working with.
And that helps establish and build that branding that we talked about earlier, and also helps establish that trust and kind of that true partnership that we were talking about earlier too. But I think we're going to talk about collaboration in a minute anyways.
Yes, and then on the for the 3PL side, it gives them one location to manage all of their drayage partners. As we mentioned earlier, on a global scale, you got to have one location to go to for all of your employees to get the information that they need and to work with the truckers that have been vetted properly. And in DrayMaster, they still do their own vetting, but they don't connect with them until they've vetted and made that a success. They have the ability to see community rates in DrayMaster, where they may run a rate search in a specific lane and see a trucker come back with a rate that they haven't had the chance to work with yet or understand them. So creating new relationships there. And then, I would say we have, the biggest piece I see on this is this, what I call a sell rate. So basically the 3PLs are using the rate information that comes back from all of the truckers. And then they use that in several different ways to come up with a markup to create a sell rate that they can start providing to their customers and their prospects. So,
Right.
and again, keeping that all centralized. And once you have everything, I use that word a lot apparently, but once you have it centralized, you know where to go to get the data to create the reports you need to generate more revenue.
Well, and think about it. Like if you're doing every invoice separately and you've got different people doing the different invoices, again, it brings in that human element. This way you can actually streamline it to a specific markup or profit margin that is central across the board, which you don't have if you've got different people doing the quoting and the invoicing and things like that. And things get missed because that's just a human element.
All the
Now,
time.
I spoke a little bit earlier about branding and trust and bringing everybody together. And everybody kind of knows that I believe that collaboration is the future of business. And during my years in 3PLs, I really found that that was lacking. So, talk to us about how DrayMaster facilitates collaboration. And really, because I think collaboration drives innovation. And I think we're only as good as the partner that we partner with in this industry. So, talk to us about how you facilitate that really important component.
Absolutely. I think there's more collaboration that needs to happen within the
Mhm.
industry. I think we've come a long way from even what you're talking about. But before I go, well, I'll just jump in. So through, with the platform on the collaboration with the truckers providing rates of all the known charges up front, that's opening up transparency and trust, right? They know that if I go and get a rate from ABC trucker and it comes time to invoice, I'm going to be pretty close. It's going to lower my invoice discrepancies.
Right.
Giving both sides the ability to connect and build relationships that they may not have had the opportunity to work with. I had one customer reach out the other day saying, "Hey, I'm trying to get in touch with this larger global forwarder, but I'm having a hard time doing it." I said, "Well, why don't you just click connect?" And showed them the process, and it was simple. So they've spent a few days trying to get in there, but by working with them, and now they're collaborating and working on some other deals. So that's another way.
Just a
And
button that says connect.
it's connect. Yep,
That's
they
all I
connect.
had to do was click a button. And here
Well,
they are trying to get them on the phone.
yes. But then the visibility across the globe and the partners and seeing what they're searching for and what lanes and how often and again relating to how often they're getting the business. Um, I would say and with that, it's going to come back to the data and the reports and what you can learn from that information, especially things you may not even know right now that you needed to know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but between that I say that, I mean, there's more features to that help with that collaboration, but really it's getting them in touch without all the unnecessary back and forth on emails and phone calls. It's straight to the point with the rates and then the trustworthy that comes from that, I guess I could say.
Yeah, and as an operator from a 3PL background, those can be hundreds, like on a daily basis, and they can be eliminated. Like, who doesn't want to take out 1,000 unopened emails from your inbox when you come back from vacation? Just saying.
And and then trying searching those emails for a specific price or yes.
Oh, I am with you on that. I spend hours searching through my email even right now, and I don't get that many.
That's a next project we got to
So let's talk benefits because with all the challenges we've talked about from technology and agility to data and collaboration, there has to be a lot of benefits to working with a platform with a company like DrayMaster. So talk to us about a few of those.
Yeah, so absolutely. So, when you get signed up and familiar and using DrayMaster, you're going to become more organized. I like to use the word responsive, and some people hate it, but professional looking. I mean, basic. It does become more professional looking, and like you have your ducks in a row. Ultimately leading to higher profitability on both sides because you end up with better understanding of really the rates and how they were generated. You've got the trucker that now knows and has a clean rate tariff, and you've got the 3PL understanding, okay, every time I quote, I'm closer to the actual invoice amount. And obviously the ability to protect those margins and then on both sides being efficient and broader market search, meaning both sides, spend less time responding to the pricing calls and emails. I get a lot of I got to call them and ask them what their current fuel is. DrayMaster has current fuel on the dashboard of both sides. You never have to call or email asking what their current fuel is.
Woo.
Um, you
That
know,
eliminates one a day.
it does. And then the ability to find vendors or customers in specific regions or where you made these lanes. We're going to show, 3PLs when you have all of your partners listed in DrayMaster. We can run a report that shows you, okay, here's where you have some gaps. In these lanes, you only have 1 or 2 truckers. In this lane, you
Right.
don't have any. In this lane, you have 20. So it kind of helps them fill gaps on where they need to find truckers.
Mhm.
And then vice versa, truckers that need, larger customer truckers that need freight in a specific region can go to those specific 3PLs in this case. And I'm trying to
Well, I would
probably
say also, like, just going back to that branding, that reputation, that trust. I mean, that really says a lot in the market as well, and it means repeat business. I mean,
it does.
let's just put it out there. If you are not establishing any one of those 3, you're not going to get repeat customers. So I think
Exactly.
those are huge, huge, huge
And,
benefits.
and the last, yeah, you're right. And the last I'd leave off is more, and I see this on a regular basis, but 3PLs across the country, across the globe, they'll say, I'm in New York, but I need to move a container in California. So what are they
Yeah.
doing? They're calling or emailing their own branch saying, hey, who do you use in this location? More wasted time and money. So
Yeah.
by having DrayMaster, they can quickly see which truckers are vetted, who comes up in those lanes when they search, and that's obviously who that branch is using.
That's another really good point because you want to make sure that they're vetted. You don't want to give over to a trucking company that you don't have vetted in your system that could potentially cause problems down the
And
line if they're not.
exactly, I do want to be clear on that. We don't do all of the vetting. It's still going to be the 3PL's responsibility to vet them prior to connecting with them in
Right.
DrayMaster.
But
But
if they're
absolutely,
in DrayMaster, you're pretty much know that your branch in California has vetted them before they upload them to the
exactly,
system or
correct.
connect with them
Yep.
in the system, right? Okay. So let's get to one of my favorite parts of the conversation. That's around case studies.
Okay.
So paint us a picture. What does it look like? Maybe what was the challenge that they came to you with? The solution, obviously, you provided was DrayMaster, but what were some of the ROI and benefits that you have seen for your trucking customers and then also your 3PL customers?
I got the interesting one. I think. I mean, they're both interesting, but they're really more so on the trucking side
Okay.
because first off, we had a mid-sized trucking company come to us. They were very adamant about, I don't think I need technology. After about a year of back and forth, they came back and said, I think I need technology. Uh, so I said, great. And to do that, we basically did a proof of concept because I wanted the customer to feel, this is the way that people are going in this industry, and you need to get on board or you're going to be left behind, whether that's DrayMaster or another tool, right?
Hmm.
So what we ended up doing was we took, high level portion of this is basically we took how the trucker would respond to rate requests before DrayMaster, and it was via email, and it wouldn't be a PDF, it would be in the body of the email.
Okay.
Um, and then they would, there was no format. They would, to your point earlier, they would type in what they think needed to be addressed
Yeah.
and hope they didn't miss anything.
And I just want to bring up one really, really interesting point with that email going out is
Mhm.
thinking about all that data that's in the email that is only necessarily being seen by that person sending out that email, but all of that data leaving the company,
Exactly. Yeah, that's a
right?
very good
And not
point.
staying
Yeah.
with the company or not staying with the company as a whole. It's staying with that one person. Anyways, sorry,
Yes,
keep
no,
going.
that's a very good point. So what we ended up doing was, let's say, so for 1 week, trucker would send out those responses just like they would without DrayMaster. At this point, we're already set up in DrayMaster with them, but we wanted to
Okay.
test this out.
You were like, no, no, hold up. You
Yep.
can't use it yet.
Yeah, you got to see this. Hold my beer. So they basically sent those emails out, responses out. 91% of those customers, for whatever reason, came back and asked for a decrease in the rate, whether it was line haul, toll, fuel, anywhere within there, they asked for a decrease.
Okay.
Another week, we sent out nothing but the professional looking quote that's kicked out from DrayMaster. For whatever reason, not one person came back. I don't have the answer on why, other than maybe they know where they were looking, the layout made it feel more professional, or they, felt like they knew what was going on. But I found that very interesting that not one rate. I didn't expect it to be that low.
Right.
So it was very, very exciting to see that on both sides. Obviously, the
And how much money did you keep on the table for them at that point? If 91% are coming back and saying, listen, you need to lower your rate. I mean, you're not going to just lower it by 1%. I mean, how much money did you keep on that table? That's amazing.
Yeah, no, and that's one thing that I don't have the numbers in front of me
No, no,
right
no,
now,
it's
but
totally fine. Not
yeah,
asking for the numbers, just making, I just want the audience to think about that, right?
yeah,
Like, how much money are we leaving on the table when we're doing it in a way where 91% of people are coming back and asking for a reduction?
exactly.
I mean,
Yeah,
anyways,
it's
keep going.
the numbers crazy. Um, so that was on the trucking side, and from that, I'll just throw it out there. What they used to have a whole team of people quoting rates, and now it's centralized, and they do right around 50,000 quote searches a month.
Wow.
That was all done by hand before. On the 3PL side of things, this one was a little bit larger. Obviously, it was our first large global forwarder that we brought into the platform, and we did the case study surrounding that. So, um, on that one, what we did was they came to us and we had to understand their biggest concern, and this is why I brought it up earlier in the talk, was the invoice discrepancies. They came to us with an 84% invoice discrepancy rate. So every quote they did turned into 84% of that was in a discrepancy. And typically caused from the fact that the trucker's not going to provide all of the known charges up front. And then, so by centralizing, that was the other thing. They had people quoting all over the place and all over the world. Now it's centralized. They get all the known charges up front. By doing all of that, the forwarder was able to lower their discrepancy by a total of 45% in 6 months.
Wow.
And that led to an overall savings for that forwarder of 1.5 million in a 16-month period. So that
Wow.
was pretty incredible to see.
That's a pretty nice chunk of change.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think every forwarder wants that, considering the margins or the margins that we work with as a 3PL. So I think that's amazing. Well, I want to continue the conversation, but we're kind of having to wind it down. We've come to the last question. What does the future hold for DrayMaster? What can what can you give us, and what can we expect from DrayMaster in the future?
So being a part of WiseTech now and the exciting direction that things are going to be going, a few of them that could speak about would be that, we have a newly released feature called Capacity Calendar. And really it allows the companies to not just list their rates in DrayMaster, so the rates get returned, but also show what their current capacity is in more of a
Okay.
stoplight scenario. So if it comes back today, red light means I'm completely booked. Yellow light, hey, I'm getting tight that day. Green light means I have capacity.
Hmm.
So that's going to be the next phase, and trying to simplify that process and limit the calls and emails based on capacity. That's currently
Cool.
happening. And that was huge during COVID. That was one of the biggest things that customers were looking for.
Yeah.
Next, I would say self-sufficient onboarding. Today, we do hold the customer's hand, mainly the trucker. A 3PL can be set up in DrayMaster in 10 minutes, and they're up and running. A trucker, it's a little more time consuming because we're cleaning everything up and getting them to a good starting point. And really, so the self-sufficient onboarding is going to allow them to do that from start to finish without having to have us watch their every move, if you will.
Cool. Well, I love both of those things, and I can't wait to see where you go from there. So now more than ever, companies must keep up with the pace of growing competition and the ever-changing digital landscape. DrayMaster makes quoting accurate, drayage and intermodal rates a breeze for truckers, 3PLs, freight forwarders, and brokers, while enabling electronic delivery to TMS and freight forwarding systems. If you want to find out more, you can check them out at envasetechnologies.com/intermodal drayage software/rate management. A massive thank you to Travis for joining me. But before we go, did you have a guess at today's big question? At the top of the show, I asked you, according to an industry report, how much is the drayage industry set to be worth by 2027? Well, it's set to be worth an estimated $8.3 billion, up from $6.1 billion in 2022. Now, that is a very big increase in 5 short years. And you're going to want to be prepared for that, especially from a technology standpoint. So, a huge thanks to the team at DrayMaster for making this episode happen. And Travis, thank you so much for joining me today.
Sarah, I really appreciate it. It was a fun time. Thank you very much.